Long live your turtle here, and this is a seasonal, temporary, outdoor, above-ground pond for my pet turtles. All right, in this video, I'm going to show you how to set up this temporary outdoor pond for pet turtles. Now, this is a kiddie pool, as you can see, and I've kind of transformed it into something that turtles can live in. There's three very important things to keep in mind when you're keeping turtles outside in an enclosure like this. So rule number one is keep your turtles in a healthy environment. I know that sounds super obvious, but I need to state the obvious here because we're not inside anymore in a controlled environment where you use a tank with aquarium heaters and stuff like that. This is a seasonal outdoor pond. I live in New England. Sun is beaming on me right now, but in the winter it's way too cold. Spring and fall, too cold. I got about 3 months where I can keep my turtles outside. And that's simply because of temperature and what the water will fluctuate between during the day and night. So depending on where you live, you need to make sure that your water temperature is within comfortable bounds of your pet turtle species. Now I have sliders, so I'm looking at between 80, low 80s, 70, high 60s at the worst. Those extremes you want to be a very limited amount of time. But between 70 and 80 is what your goal is. So during the day, you're gonna get up near that 80 probably during the summer, and at night, you're gonna get to that low 70 temperature. And that's good. If you're getting outside those bounds too much, that's gonna be unhealthy for your turtle. If it's too hot, think in Texas, Florida, you need to be very careful on a smaller pond like this, how much it heats up in the sun. Too cold, I'm thinking winter here in New England. It's gonna be way too cold, it's gonna freeze over. And the seasons in between, spring and fall, you're gonna have big temperature fluctuations, and that's gonna be unhealthy for your turtle because many of them brumate, and that's your turtle knowing the seasons instinctually and changing their metabolism to match, but you don't want that to fluctuate and confuse them, and that's gonna be very unhealthy for them. And with that healthy environment, of course, you need to include a basking area for your turtle, a dry place for them to crawl out of the water and soak up those sweet, sweet, real sun rays. No more of those basking lamps during the summer for these guys. And of course, you wanna have clean water for them. So I'm using 2 Fluval FX6s. This holds about 400 gallons of water. And then of course, you do 25% water changes every 2 weeks to keep those nitrates low. That's number one. That was a mouthful, apologize for that. Number 2 and 3 are quicker. Number 2 is make sure your turtle cannot escape their enclosure. These are pet turtles. They have never experienced the wild, but they're also turtles, so they're always interested in escaping whatever enclosure they're in. And I'm sorry, my turtles will not do well in the forest that surrounds them, or the river that's nearby, or the pond that's nearby. They don't know how to live in a wild environment, and they're gonna be easy prey for anything looking for a little turtly snack. So to reiterate, number 2, your turtles cannot escape their enclosure. Now number 3 is similar but opposite. You need to keep your turtles protected from the outside wild, the predators that lurk out there that you don't even know exist. But for an above ground pool like this, where it's really easy to see in and the turtles can't really go too far, you want to keep them protected from something that could see them as an easy snack. And those are the 3 major things to be thinking about while you set up a pond like this. Now, I got 3 of my slider turtles in here and 2 fish. They've been thriving for 2 weeks in here, so this is an excellent setup for them. Now let me get to showing you exactly how this was all set up.
And away we go. So I got a Lark Pool. So this is a 7-foot metal frame. They call it Sport Splash Swimming Pool. So it's basically a kiddie pool that is 7 feet by 5 feet by 2 feet, 2 feet tall. And at about 80% capacity, this thing holds 469 gallons. So I'm pretty much holding around 450 for this setup, which is an amazing amount of water when you think of tanks. And this was $140. A 400-gallon tank, that's a couple $1,000s. So this is a huge difference in price, but you're providing a lot of space for your turtle. Now you've probably noticed I'm not telling you how to build this, and that's because this isn't really DIY. This is just a product with an instruction booklet, and you just follow the instructions. You basically have a bunch of metal pieces that go around the perimeter, and then you have some vertical pieces that hold it all up. So pretty straightforward and actually really easy to build. My favorite part of this is it's really easy to take down. You just take off those posts and you can either store it with the perimeter still in there, or you can take off each individual metal piece. All really easy things to do. And you got those little drainage valves, which I really like for doing water changes and just draining it all together. Now, a really important thing when it comes to placing your pool is you want it to be in a place where you get about 4 to 6 hours of direct sunlight. You don't really need it all on the entire surface area of your pool, but you definitely need at least probably half of it to have that sun with a basking area that your turtles can climb out of and soak up that sun. Otherwise, you have to move your pool around to get that kind of exposure, and that's not a problem when it's so temporary like this. Now, I'm setting up 2 Fluval FX6 filters. Now, you're probably like, wow, those are definitely indoor filters, and you're correct. That's why I'm kind of elevating them here on these bricks and tiles. I don't want them to be sitting on the ground when it gets wet and rains. I don't think it's really built for, outdoor exposure. And you can see I'm just using some household hardware clamps to hold the tubes because they don't work like they normally would in an aquarium. And you'll see that you can actually use PVC elbow pieces as well. On my other one I did that, and that actually worked really well because it's heavy and holds it right on there. Definitely recommend using those PVC pipes. Now, to the cool part, the basking area. Amazingly, they have a floating dock for ponds like this. Now, I'm using a brick, and you put it in this little baggie, and this acts as an anchor for your big floating dock. Now, this is just like the smaller ones with the suction cups that go in aquariums that I hate, but this one's great because it's actually kind of hard to get a floating type dock like this in a temporary pond. You have to use rocks and piles of things, but don't worry, I already have DIY plans for making a dock like this one in the future. But make sure you got that string nice and taut and in the middle of your pool. You don't want your basking dock to be bumping against the side of the pool because that's going to be a really easy escape route for your turtle. Absolutely don't want that. So make sure your dock can't move from the middle of the pool. Next up, I'm going to put a floating turtle log into the pool. Now, this is typically for smaller turtles, but for my turtles, it'll be great. They won't be able to totally climb out and use it as a basking area, but they'll be able to hold on to it and kind of hang out looking up and around and maybe get a little bit out of the water, but it's not really meant for that. It's more of just a, hey, what's up, hang out, sort of log. And it'll just look nice, and it doesn't really go bad because it's made of that same fake foam stuff that the basking area is made of. Whoop! Next up, and I know I'm going to get a lot of hate for it, is fake lily pads. Oh yeah. I got these just from the hardware store because this is halfway through the summer already, and I don't want to deal with living plants, setting all that up, just for them to have to be taken down or die. So I'm going to go with fake. And they look nice, and they give a little cover and a little security for the turtles, just because you have a little more on the surface of the water there. So tossed a couple packs of those in there, and honestly, they look okay, so I'm not going to get too bent over the absolute sacrilege of throwing fake lily pads into a pond. And to make up for it, I got some real driftwood. Yeah, I found this out in the wild, but had a great place to find the driftwood, and got a couple of great sticks that I'm just going to throw in there. And again, this is a place where they float right now. They'll probably sink in the future, but a place where your turtle can hang out and hide underneath, or just kind of hang on to and check out what's going on above the water. And let's add a little real nature to this very fake setup. Now, to spice up the aesthetic of the outside of the pool, because it looks awful right now, and to provide a little privacy screen for the turtles, I'm going to use this reed fencing, and it's 6 foot by 16 feet, so it's quite tall, so I'm actually going to cut it in half. Now, there's a bunch of metal wire that holds this all together, and I'm using this glorious chop saw to basically cut everything in half. You gotta go through the wire there. It's kind of awkward, and it's not gonna be perfect, but that's okay, because it's a reed wall. It doesn't need to be perfect. So I cut it in 2 pieces, and this was nice to have some helping hands here, but basically I'm just wrapping it around the pool, and I'm putting the 2 joints of the 2 pieces on the corners, just so they don't stick out in the middle of the wall area. Now, these reeds are thin and light, and they will fall with any gust of the smallest wind. So in order to hold it up, I'm actually taking zip ties and just zip tying it to those metal frame vertical pieces. So that makes it really easy to just keep the fence upright, which looks 100 times better, and not across the lawn and in the woods. All I needed was 1 zip tie for each leg of the pool. And now that the pool is nice and mature looking, it is time to add the celebrities. We are going to add Moses, Harold, and Crackers to our new oasis outside. This is their first time ever being outside in a pool-like enclosure like this. They have never lived outdoors, and this is going to be like a little freedom for them. I'm like really excited when I was doing this. Like, wow. They actually are probably a little nervous, They're like going into game day. But boy, once they were in there, they were looking real comfortable, settling right in. And, Crackers really liked that new basking dock so much. She just didn't even want to hop off. She's just like, yep, this is the life now. Thank you. Love summer. Now, while you watch your glorious beasts, just check all the corners, check where your water level is, make sure they can't escape, because you don't want them escaping into the wild. They will not make it. And speaking of escaping, now, this is an open top pool, very easy to see into, and there's predators out there, so I want to make sure that nothing can get into this pool. If this was like a deeper pond with lots of cover and darkness, maybe I wouldn't need to do this, but absolutely with an above ground pool like this, it needs to be covered from the predators out there, and also help keep them in certain instances. So what I'm using here is a wildlife netting. It's 7 feet by 100 feet, so tons and tons of material here. It's a very coarse and plastic mesh, so it's really hard to see, which is really nice because you don't want to see this net that's over your great oasis. You want to enjoy everything. Now you'll notice I use some PVC pipe just to hold it down and keep everything a little more taut. But really the reeds, and this was by accident, they added a really good structure for that mesh to hold onto so that it held itself pretty much flat over the actual water. Because if you just tried to put it over the pool, it would have slumped into the water there and your turtles would have got caught up in it. They couldn't have basked. So it was really nice to have that extra couple inches on that reed, and those little tiny reeds themselves are really good little anchors for the mesh to kind of stick around and hold itself all up. And that was the last and final step for a successful outdoor temporary seasonal pond. Now, do not forget those 3 critical pointers that I went over in the beginning of the video. Those are so crucial for your turtle's well-being. Now, there's one little concern I see popping up in this pool, and I want listeners like you to put in the comment section what you think I am missing here and what it's going to lead to, because in a future video we're going to deal with it. So thanks for making it this far in the video, and subscribe, like, long live your turtle.